Elias had pulled his horse up so sharp the bay nearly stumbled. Through the cracked wall of a broken cabin, he watched a starving mother divide one strip of burnt fat between three small children and tell them she'd already eaten. His hands shook on the reins. 15 years a rich man, and he'd never once felt this poor. He turned his face before the little girl could see a grown rancher cry. The bay mare carried Elias hard down the main street of San Rafael at a slow walk. 3 men tipped their hats before he'd passed the second hitching post. Mr. Hart. Mr. Hart, sir. Afternoon, Mr. Hart. Elias touched the brim of his own hat each time, but didn't smile or slow. He was 38, 6 feet of weather and silence, the richest cattleman within 100 miles of the New Mexico line. His saddlebags bulged with flour, coffee, dried beef, and 4 tins of yellow peaches he'd bought at twice the price because the merchant said no one else in town could afford them. The summer of 1873 had broken half the families in the territory. Elias's herds had walked through the drought like it was someone else's trouble. Dale Reed rode up alongside him on a buckskin gelding. Dale was 41, lean as a fence post, the only man on the Hart ranch who spoke to Elias like a friend instead of a wage. "Buy out the whole store again, boss?" "Most of it. Cookhouse doesn't need that much salt pork." "Cookhouse isn't getting all of it." Dale glanced at the saddlebags, then at Elias's face, and decided not to press. They turned past the Methodist church, and that was where Martha Pike caught them. Martha was a barrel-shaped woman whose husband owned a dry goods store and whose mouth ran the town's gossip like a millstream ran a grist mill. She stood on the church steps with Reverend Silas Boone and 2 other women, and raised her voice on purpose. "Elias Hart, you riding home or riding to ruin?" "Heading home, Mrs. Pike." "Heard you bought every peach in the territory." "Heard right. What's a bachelor one with peaches?" "Reckon I like peaches." Reverend Boone laughed politely. Martha Pike laughed too loud. "Mr. Hart," the Reverend called, "we'd be honored to see you Sunday. Been a season since you last sat under the gospel." "Been working, Reverend." "The Lord works too, sir." 6 days, then he rested. Even the cattle baron of San Rafael gets a Sabbath. Elias touched his hat. "Much obliged for the reminder." He nudged the bay forward before Martha could find another question. Dale waited until they were past the schoolhouse. "That woman would skin a saint to get the gossip off the bone." "Let her. She'll have me married off to a Denver heiress by supper. She can write the wedding by candlelight if it pleases her." "I ain't reading it." The road out of San Rafael forked half a mile past the last fence. The right fork ran straight to the Hart Ranch. The left ran past the burying ground, the dry creek, and a string of broken cabins empty for 3 years. Elias took the left fork. Dale looked over. "Long way home. Want to look at the South Water?" "South Water dried up 2 months ago." "Then I'll look at where it used to be." Dale let it go. They were halfway down the fork when Elias heard it. A child laughed. He pulled the bay up so sharp the mare snorted and sidestepped. "Boss?" Elias held up a hand. The laugh came again, high and small, from a girl no older than 4, from a cabin empty since the Hollis family went east in 71. The chimney was cracked clean through. Half the front porch had sunk into the dirt. The south shutter hung from one nail. "Dale?" "Yeah." "Right on ahead." "I ain't." "Right on ahead. I'll catch up." Dale looked at him a long second, then turned the buckskin around and went. Elias swung down slow, led the bay off the road, looped the reins around a creosote bush, and walked toward the cabin on the balls of his boots like a man stalking deer. The south shutter had a gap. The wall beside the chimney had cracked through where the foundation settled. He could see straight into the kitchen. Inside, a woman was setting a table. The table was a crate. The cloth was a flour sack washed thin. The plates were 3 tin cups and 1 cracked saucer. 3 children. The oldest was a girl of maybe 9, hair braided tight, hands folded in her lap like she was at Sunday dinner. A boy of about 7 sat as straight, but his eyes kept flicking to the crate. The smallest, the 4-year-old who had laughed, kicked her bare feet against the chair leg and hummed a tune Elias half remembered from his own mother. The woman had her back turned, thin in the shoulders the way a woman gets when she's been giving her food to other mouths for a long time. She turned with a wooden bowl in her hands. Elias's breath went out of him. She was beautiful, and she was starving. Her cheekbones stood out like ledges. Her wrists were no thicker than a child's. But she carried that bowl like it was full of silver. She set it in the middle of the crate with the same care a finer woman would use setting down a roast goose at Christmas. Now then. Anne, Caleb, Molly. Hands. The 3 children folded their hands. Lord, we thank thee for this bounty before us. We thank thee for thy grace and thy mercy. We thank thee for one another. Amen. Amen, the children said. She picked up a spoon. There was nothing in the bowl but a strip of burnt fat the size of 2 fingers, a smear of cornmeal, and 2 shriveled beans. Elias watched her divide it. The biggest piece of fat went to the boy. The second to the oldest girl. She broke the smallest piece in half, gave half to the 4-year-old, put the other half on the cracked saucer for herself. She spooned cornmeal onto the children's tin cups. She gave each one a single bean. Her saucer she left empty. The smallest child looked at the saucer. Mama. Where's yours? Hush, Molly. Eat. Mama, you ain't got nothing. I ate while I was cooking, sweetheart. Mama's full up. The boy looked at his sister. The boy looked at the saucer. The boy did not say a word. The oldest girl said, Mama. Anne. Mama, you said that yesterday. And with more. You eat your supper. You eat every bite. And you thank the Lord for it. Yes, ma'am. The 4-year-old put her spoon down. She picked up her piece of fat, broke it in half with her tiny fingers, and held one half across the crate. Mama, have mine. The woman's hand stopped halfway to her mouth. Molly, you put that back. Mama, you're hungry. I can tell. Molly Whitmore, you put that piece back on your plate this minute or I will turn you. The 4-year-old started to cry. Not loud. The way a child cries when she has already learned that loud crying doesn't fetch anything but more sorrow. Her shoulders shook, her chin trembled, tears went down her cheeks without a sound. The woman set down her spoon. She got up, came around the crate, knelt in front of her smallest child. She took that half piece of burnt fat in her own fingers and put it back in the child's hand and closed the small fist around it. Listen to Mama. Listen, good baby girl. You got to eat. You got to grow. That's your work. You hear me? Yes, Mama. Mama's work is feeding you. Your work is eating. We don't trade jobs, sweetheart. That ain't how the Lord made it. Yes, Mama. Now you eat. The child ate. The woman stood up. She turned her back to the table fast, put her hand on the warped edge of the dry sink, and stood there a long moment with her shoulders held perfectly square. She did not cry. She did not let one sound out. She just stood holding herself up by the dry sink while behind her 3 children chewed each bite slow to make it last. Elias' heart stood at the cracked wall with his hand pressed flat against the warm wood. He could not feel his own legs. He had seen a Comanche raid. He had seen a barn burn with 2 men inside. He had seen his mother dead on a cornhusk mattress in Missouri when he was 11. He had not seen anything that broke him the way that empty saucer broke him. He took 1 step backward. Dry grass crunched under his boot. The oldest girl's head turned. And Whitmore looked straight at the gap in the shutter. For 1 terrible second, her eyes met his. She was 9 years old, and she had the look of a woman who'd buried her own father. She did not call out. She did not jump. She just looked at him level and calm. Elias understood without a word that this little girl had decided years ago she would never beg a stranger for 1 crumb of bread, not for herself, not even for her mother. Then she turned her face back to her supper. Elias backed away from the wall and walked to his horse with his heart going so hard he could hear it inside his own ears. He rode home at a walk, the bay wanting to break into a trot when she smelled the ranch on the wind. Elias held her back because his hands were shaking. Dale was waiting at the barn. Took you long enough. Take her, Dale. Boss. Take the mare. Brush her down. Feed her. Dale looked at his face. Elias. The first time in 2 years Dale had used his Christian name. What is it? What did you see down there? Take the mare. He walked past Dale without waiting. The cookhouse was warm with supper. The long table was set for 12 hands and a foreman and a boss. Beef stew thick with onions and potatoes. A stack of biscuits as tall as a man's hat. Butter in a yellow crock, dark molasses in a jar, a bowl of preserved peaches the cook had opened special because it was Friday. Elias sat at the head of the table. The hands took off their hats. He bowed his head. Lord, we thank thee for this bounty. Amen. Amen. The hands started to eat. Elias picked up his spoon. He looked at the stew, the biscuits, the bowl of peaches he had paid $2 a tin for that afternoon. He set the spoon down. He pushed the bowl away. He stood up. Boss, said one of the younger hands. Stew ain't right. Stew's fine, son. Eat your supper. He walked out and did not look back. Dale found him an hour later sitting on the top rail of the corral with his hat in his hands. You going to tell me, or you going to sit out here till the coyotes come? Hollis' cabin. What about it? It ain't empty. Dale was quiet a second. Who? Woman. 3 children. 2 girls and a boy. Whitmore. Must be. Came in on the spring stage. Husband died east of Santa Fe. Mill somewhere up in the Panhandle before that. Town wouldn't put her up. Reverend Boone offered her the parsonage attic, and she wouldn't take it. Why not? Said she'd work for her keep or she wouldn't keep nothing. How's she eating? Here and there. Takes in washing. Ain't enough. Elias put his hat back on and stared at the dark line of the foothills. Dale. Yeah. When my mother died, I was 11. I know it, boss. I ain't told you how she died. No, sir, you ain't. She starved. The wind moved across the corral. A horse stamped in the dark. Winter in Missouri. The year after my father got killed at Pea Ridge. We had nothing. My mother used to tell me she'd already eaten. Said it like it was the easiest thing in the world. Said it every day for 2 months. I was so hungry I didn't think to question her. I just ate what she put in front of me. By the time spring came, she was gone. He was quiet a long minute. There was a man in our town. Name of Hollis, matter of fact. Don't know if it's the same family. Probably ain't. But one morning toward the end, he left a sack of cornmeal on our porch with no name on it. My mother cried for an hour. Then she made cornbread and gave most of it to me. Boss. He never said it was him. I figured it out 3 years later. By then, he was dead too. Dale did not speak. That woman in that cabin is feeding her babies the way my mother fed me. And I rode past, with 4 tins of peaches in my saddlebags. You didn't know. I know now. He did not sleep that night. He sat at the desk in the front room of the ranch house with a lamp burning low, and wrote nothing, read nothing, only thought. He thought about Martha Pike's voice on the church steps and how it would carve a proud woman into pieces if it ever got the chance. He thought about Reverend Silas Boone, not a cruel man, but one who believed charity was a sermon a body had to sit through before they could eat. He thought about a town that had let a widow starve in a broken cabin half a mile from its own pantry doors. And he thought about Ann Whitmore's eyes. That child had looked at him through the gap and had not asked. Had not begged. Had not pointed and cried out. She had decided that if charity was going to come to that table, it was going to come without a single soul in San Rafael ever knowing the Whitmores had taken it. That 9-year-old girl had taught Elias Hart something he had not known he needed to learn. He could not knock on that door tomorrow with a basket on his arm. The mother would refuse it. The town would gossip. The little girl who had looked at him would never look him in the eye again, because pride was the last thing that family had left. The moment he asked for thanks, he would take that too. If he was going to feed those children, he was going to have to feed them the way the Hollis man had fed him, in the dark before dawn, without a name. He picked up the lamp, walked to the kitchen, opened the pantry. Flour, salt pork, beans, molasses, 4 tins of yellow peaches. He stood a long time. Then he reached up and took down a basket. It weighed 12 pounds when he was done. Flour, salt pork wrapped in oil paper, a pound of beans, a twist of coffee, a small jar of molasses, 2 tins of peaches wrapped in feed sacks so they wouldn't clatter, a wedge of yellow cheese the cook had been saving for Sunday, and, because he could not help himself, a 1/4 pound of sugar tied in brown paper for the 4-year-old who had broken her piece of fat in half. He carried the basket out the back door. Dale was standing in the yard with a lantern. Elias stopped dead. Thought you was asleep. Thought you was too. Dale. I ain't asking, boss. I saddled the gray. He's quieter than the bay. Elias stood with the basket in his hand and could not speak for a moment. You're a good man, Dale Reed. I'm a tired man is what I am. Get on that horse before I change my mind about letting you do this fool thing alone. He rode the grey gelding to the fork and tied him behind the same creosote bush. He carried the basket the last 100 yards on foot. The cabin was dark. No smoke from the cracked chimney. No lamp behind the broken shutter. He set the basket on the walkboards of the porch, soft as a man setting down a sleeping baby. Then he turned and walked away. He did not look back. He had promised himself that a man who looked back was a man who wanted to be thanked. And Elias Hart had decided around 2 in the morning that if he ever once wanted thanks for what he was about to do, he would deserve to be cursed for it instead. Clara Whitmore opened her front door at sunrise to throw out the dishwater and stopped with the basin in her hands. Oh, sweet Jesus. Mama. Anne's voice came from inside. Mama, what is it? Anne, you stay back. Mama. And Whitmore, you stay where you are. Clara sat down the basin. She knelt slow like a woman approaching a snake, lifted the corner of the cloth covering the basket, and looked underneath for a long time without moving. Then she stood up, walked out into the yard in her bare feet, and turned a full circle. There was no one. Only the road, the dry grass, and the first red line of the sun over the foothills. Who, she said low, almost to herself. Who did this? She came back to the porch, knelt again, pulled back the cloth all the way. Mama. Anne was standing in the doorway. Mama, is that? Get inside. Mama, is that food? I said get inside. The little girl did not move. Clara sat back on her heels with her hand pressed flat against her own mouth, stayed that way a long second. Then she pulled the cloth back over the basket, picked it up, carried it inside, and shut the door. She set it on the crate. And watched. The boy watched. The 4-year-old came padding out of the back room rubbing her eyes. Mama, Caleb said. Mama, what's in it? I don't know yet, son. Mama, can we look? No. But Mama. Caleb, hush. She stood at the crate with both hands flat on the cloth and did not lift it. The children watched. The 4-year-old climbed onto a chair. None of them spoke. And, Clara said finally. Yes, ma'am. You go back into our room. You take your brother and your sister with you. You shut the door. Mama, I want to. Anne. Yes, ma'am. The children went. Clara stood alone at the crate for 1 more minute. Then she lifted the cloth and looked at the flour, the salt pork, the beans, the coffee, the cheese, the 2 tins of peaches, the brown paper twists of sugar. She sat down hard on the dirt floor, put her face in her hands, and cried without making a sound. She fed her children that morning. She fried slices of salt pork in a skillet she had not used in 3 weeks. She made biscuits from the flour and a little of the drippings. She gave each child a tin cup of coffee with sugar stirred in, coffee she had not tasted since the spring stage and her children had never tasted at all. They ate in silence. Halfway through her biscuit, and set it down. Mama, eat. I am, child. Mama, where did it come from? I don't know, Anne. Yes, you do. Anne Whitmore. Mama, you was looking for somebody in the yard. You know who it was. I do not know who it was. Mama. Anne, I do not know, and it ain't ours to ask. You hear me? It ain't ours to ask and it ain't ours to tell. And you will not breathe a word of this in town. Not to the Reverend. Not to the women at the well. Not to that pike woman if she ever speaks to you, which she won't. Do you understand me? Yes, Mama. Caleb, Molly, you hear your mama? Yes, ma'am, said the boy. Yes, Mama, said the little one with her mouth full of biscuit. This food is between this family and the Lord. That is all. That is all it is. It came again the next morning, and the morning after that. By the end of the first week, Clara had stopped looking for the man who left it. By the end of the second, she had started leaving the basket on the porch washed and folded, the cloth pressed under a smooth river stone so the wind wouldn't take it. By the end of the third, she had started leaving small things in it. The first was a torn shirt sleeve she had mended so fine the stitches did not show. She did not know if the giver wore a shirt. She did not know anything about him at all, but she could not let the basket go back empty. The second was a pressed wildflower from the dry creek, a blue one. Anne had picked it. The third was a note. She wrote it 3 times before she got it right. Her hand was out of practice. The first version said too much. The second said too little. The third said only, "Whoever you are, the Lord sees you. So do my children. Thank you." She did not sign it. She left it under the river stone on the empty basket at sunset and went back inside and did not sleep that night. Elias found the note at 4 in the morning. He read it by lantern light at a fork in the road, sitting on the grey gelding with his head pushed back. He read it twice, then a third time. Then he folded it small and put it inside his vest pocket and rode home with his hand pressed flat against the place where the paper sat against his ribs. He kept it there for 11 days. The trouble started at the dry goods store. Martha Pike was weighing out coffee on the brass scale when Elias laid down his order. She counted the items twice before she'd give him a price. 40 pounds of flour, Mr. Hart. That's right. You bought 40 pounds last week, I recollect. I recollect that too, Mrs. Pike. And 40 pounds the week before. Reckon it is. That's 120 pounds of flour in 3 weeks, Mr. Hart. Reckon it is. Cookhouse must be busy. Cookhouse is fine. Martha set the scoop down and put both hands flat on the counter. Mr. Hart. Mrs. Pike. You don't run no boarding house. No, ma'am, I do not. You don't have no woman at that ranch. No, ma'am. Then what in the name of the Lord are you doing with 120 pounds of flour? Elias set a $5 gold piece on the counter. I'm paying for it, Mrs. Pike. Wrap it up, please. By Sunday, the talk had reached the Methodist church steps. Reverend Silas Boone caught Elias's elbow as he was leaving service. Brother Hart. A word. Reverend. Walk with me. They walked along the side of the church to where the cottonwood threw a little shade. Brother Hart, I will not insult you by repeating what is being said in this town. Then don't, Reverend. But I will tell you that a bachelor of your standing must be careful. Charity is a Christian duty. Private charity, however, can give the appearance of impropriety. Particularly when the recipient is a woman who is not your king. Reverend. Yes, Brother Hart. You said, the recipient. You named her in your head before you said one word to me. You knew exactly who I was buying that flour for. The whole town knows. And not one soul in this congregation has carried so much as a biscuit to that cabin in 5 months. But the minute somebody else does, you all want to call it impropriety. Brother Hart, that is not. Good Sabbath to you, Reverend. He walked to his horse and rode out of the churchyard at a trot. Behind him, Martha Pike was already telling the deacon's wife that the rancher had spoken sharp to the Reverend, and there was clearly a guilty conscience at work. That afternoon, Ann Whitmore came home from the well with an empty bucket and a face like stone. Mama. Where's the water, child? Mama, I left the bucket. I'll go get it. I just had to come tell you. Ann, what is wrong with you? Mama, the woman at the well was talking. Clara put down the shirt she was mending. Talking about what? About you, Mama. Ann. Mama, they said you was a kept woman. They said the rancher, Mr. Hart, was paying for our food because. Ann, they said it, Mama. Who said it? Which woman? Mrs. Pike was the loudest. Clara stood up out of her chair so slow it was like a thing happening underwater. Ann. Yes, Mama. You go back to the well. You get that bucket. You walk past those women and you do not look at them. You do not speak to them. You bring back the water. Do you hear me? Yes, Mama. Tell your brother to go with you. The child went. Clara sat back down on the chair. She folded her hands in her lap. She did not move for a long time. When she stood up, she took the empty basket off the table. She took the cloth. She took the river stone. She did not put a flower in it. She did not put a note in it. She did not put a folded mended thing in it. She set the empty basket on the porch. The next morning, when Elias came at 4, he stood in front of it for a long time before he set the new basket down. He did not understand what had changed. He did not know if she was angry or frightened. He only knew the silence felt different now. He set the basket down anyway. It went on 3 more days like that. 3 mornings of full baskets going onto the porch. 3 evenings of empty baskets coming back. No flower. No note. No folded mending. On the 4th day, Elias' heart did not go. He sat on the corral fence at 3 in the morning with the grey gelding saddle and waiting. Dale came out and stood beside him without speaking. Dale. Yeah. I think she knows. How would she know? I don't know how. But the silence ain't ordinary silence. That's the kind a woman uses when she's trying to tell a man something. What's she telling you? I don't know that either. He sat on the rail another minute. Dale, if I take that basket today, and the talk in town is what we both know it is, and she has heard one word of it, what does it look like to her? I don't follow. A man who has been watching her stuff. A man with money. A man who keeps coming in the dark. What does that look like from her side of the door? Dale was quiet a long time. It looks like a price, boss. Yes. Looks like he's going to come knocking one morning and tell her what the price is. Yes. Elias swung his leg over the rail, got down off the fence, took the basket off the gelding's saddle, and carried it back into the kitchen. He set it on the table. He did not ride out that morning. Clara Whitmore opened her front door at sunrise. The porch was empty. She stood in the doorway with her hand on the frame and looked at the boards where the basket should have been. Her face did not change. She turned around, went back inside, shut the door, walked to the back room where her children were still sleeping, and stood looking down at them with her hands pressed flat against her apron. Anne woke first. Mama. Hush. Sleep, Anne. Mama, did the basket come? Sleep, Anne. The little girl sat up. Mama, did it come? No, Anne, it did not come this morning. Mama, why? I don't know, child. Mama, did we do something wrong? Clara knelt by the bed. She put her hand on her oldest girl's cheek. Anne, listen to Mama. We did not do anything wrong. Not one thing. Do you hear me? Yes, Mama. Whatever is happening, whatever the man is doing, whatever the town is saying, whatever any soul on God's earth is thinking about us, we did not do one thing wrong. You hold on to that. You hold on to that with both your hands. Yes, Mama. Now you go back to sleep. Mama, I ain't tired no more. Anne Whitmore, close your eyes. The little girl closed her eyes. Clara stood up, walked back to the front room, sat down at the crate. She looked at the breakfast she had been about to make. Half a cup of cornmeal. A little salt pork drippings saved from the day before. 3 biscuits divided 4 ways. She understood without anyone telling her that this was all there was because she had been counting on the basket. That was the part that broke her, not the empty porch, not the gossip, not the women at the well. The fact that she had let herself count on it. She put her face in her hands and sat that way for a long time. At the Hart Ranch, Elias was not in the house. He was in the barn, sitting on a barrel of feed with the grey gelding still saddled and tied to a post. He had been sitting there since before dawn. The sun was up now. The hens had come and gone for breakfast. Dale had come twice and not spoken and gone away again. The cook came across the yard with a tin cup of coffee. "Mr. Hart, sir." "Set it down, Sam." "Thank you." The cook set down the coffee and hesitated. "Mr. Hart." "Yes, Sam." "Boys are saying the boss ain't himself." "Boys are right, Sam." "Anything I can do, sir?" "No, son. Get on back to the cookhouse." The cook went. Elias picked up the coffee, held it in both hands, did not drink it. After a while, he said out loud to nobody, "I made it worse." The grey gelding flicked an ear. "I made it worse, and I knew I was making it worse the second I unsaddled the horse, and I did it anyway because I was afraid." He sat there with the coffee in his hands. "That woman has been hungry for 5 months. She has been called names at the well. She has been turned away from the parsonage attic. And the only kindness she has had in this whole godforsaken country was a basket on her porch in the dark. And I took it away from her this morning because I was afraid of what the gossip would do to my name." He set the coffee down untouched. "Dale." The foreman stepped out of the next stall. He had not been gone after all. "Yeah, boss." "Saddle the bay." "You ain't riding the grey." "I'm riding the bay in the daylight. Down the main street, past the dry goods, past the church, past every soul in this town who has called that woman a kept woman in the last 3 weeks. Boss. I'm taking that basket to her front door, Dale, in the sun with my hat in my hand. And if Mother Pike wants to stand on the porch of that store and watch me do it, she can stand there till her boots root into the planks for all I care." "Boss, you sure?" "I am sure." "You know what this does?" "I know what it does." "It tells the whole town." "Yes." "It tells her." Elias picked up his hat off the barrel. "That is the part one should have done 3 weeks ago. That is the part one owe her. The town can choke on the rest of it." He put the hat on his head and walked out into the yard. Behind him, the bay mare was already being led out of her stall. In the cabin half a mile from town, Clara Whitmore sat at her crate with her face in her hands and did not yet know that the giver she had been waiting for in the dark was about to come down her road in the broad noon sun. The bay mare came down the main street of San Rafael at a walk. The basket rode across Elias Hart's saddle horn in plain sight of every soul in town. The first man to see him was the blacksmith. He stopped his hammer mid-swing and stood in the door of his shop with iron cooling in his tongs. "Mr. Hart." "Morning, Hank." "That a basket, sir?" "Reckon it is." "In the daylight?" "Reckon it is, Hank." The blacksmith did not say another word. He stepped back inside and called for his apprentice. By the time Elias was past the second hitching post, the apprentice was already running for the dry goods store. Mother Pike came out onto the porch with a flour-dusted apron and her mouth already open. "Elias Hart." "Mrs. Pike." "Where do you think you're going with that basket, sir?" "I think I am going to the Whitmore cabin, Mrs. Pike." "In the broad daylight?" "In the broad daylight." "You will not, sir." "You will not." "Not in this town." "I will, Mrs. Pike." He did not stop the bay. He did not even look at her. He tipped his hat and rode on. Behind him, Martha Pike turned to the deacon's wife and the schoolma'am and a thin woman from the Baptist congregation and said something Elias could not hear. He did not need to hear it. He knew what it was. By the time he passed the church, 3 women were walking after him on foot, 2 more had come out of the milliners, and a boy of about 12 was running ahead toward the parsonage to fetch the reverend. Dale Reed rode beside him on the buckskin and said nothing. At the cabin, Clara Whitmore was kneeling by the coal stove trying to coax a fire out of 3 sticks of mesquite when Anne came running in from the yard with her face white. "Mama! Mama, somebody's coming." "Anne!" "Mama, a lot of somebodies." "Mama, there's a man on a horse, and there's people walking behind him, and Mrs. Pike is one of them." Clara stood up. "Anne, take your brother and your sister into the back room." "Mama." "Now, Anne. Now." She went to the door. She did not open it. She stood beside it with her hand pressed flat against the wood and listened. She heard the slow, steady walk of a horse on hard ground. She heard footsteps behind it. She heard Martha Pike's voice carrying 100 yards on the dry summer air. "Reverend," in front of the children. Clara closed her eyes. She knew before she opened the door. She had known in some place in her chest since the first basket. She had refused to know it. She had wrapped the knowledge up in 3 weeks of pressed flowers and folded mending and a single careful note. She had let herself believe in a ghost because the alternative was a man with a name, and a name in this country meant a price. She had been counting on the basket. That sentence came back to her now like a slap. The horse stopped in front of her porch. A man's boots came down on the boards. A knuckle struck the door 3 times, soft, slow, even, like a man who had practiced what he was going to do. Clara opened the door. Elias Hart stood there with his hat in one hand and the basket in the other. She knew his face. Everyone in San Rafael knew his face. The richest man within 100 miles. The cattle baron with the scarred jaw. The bachelor who had ridden past her cabin twice in the spring and tipped his hat without slowing. She looked at him, then at the basket, then at his face again. The color went out of her cheeks and came back red. "You, Mrs. Whitmore." "You?" "Yes, ma'am." "It was you." "Yes, ma'am." "All of it." "Yes, ma'am." "All of it." Behind him on the road, the women had stopped walking. They stood in a knot of about 7 now, with the Reverend hurrying up the road from the parsonage, the schoolmaster behind him, and behind all of them a string of townspeople that had grown to 20 before Clara had finished saying his name a second time. She did not look at them. She looked at Elias Hart. "Mr. Hart." "Ma'am." "You let me thank a ghost." "Mrs. Whitmore." "You let me thank a ghost, sir, while the town laughed at me." "Ma'am, I did not." "You let my child be called a catwoman's daughter at the well." "You let Mrs. Pike yonder open her mouth on me 3 weeks running." "And you sat in your fine ranch house and you knew." "Ma'am." "You knew." "Yes, ma'am. I knew." "And you came in the dark." "Yes." "Why?" "Because I thought." "Why, Mr. Hart?" "Because I thought if I came in the day, you would not take the food." "You were right." "I know it." "You were right, sir." "And you came anyway." "Yes, ma'am." 3 weeks. 22 days. "Ma'am, you counted." "Yes, ma'am. I counted."